I bet if you're driving an EV at the moment, I have a hybrid, so it's not quite as good, but I bet if you're driving an EV at the moment, you're feeling pretty smug.
Hello, and welcome to The Greener Way. I'm your host, Michelle Baltazar from FS Sustainability. This month, energy security is firmly back in the headlines following the federal government's appointment of a new fuel czar last week to oversee Australia's fuel supply and assess vulnerabilities in the system. But what does energy security really mean this year? What are we doing about it? And where does green energy and sustainable investing fit into the conversation where it feels like we're just talking about oil, gas, and fuel stockpiles? To help unpack all of this, I'm joined today by economist Nicki Hutley, who is currently the Chief Economic Advisor to the Customer-Owned Banking Association, counselor on the Climate Council, and herself is an independent chief economist. Nicki, good to have you back again on the podcast.
Always good to see you, Michelle.
Nicki, from an economic point of view, how should we interpret the appointment of Anthea Harris as the new fuel czar? Is it about coordination, preparedness, or responding to a changing global energy landscape?
Look, I think it's very much a knee-jerk response to what is happening, the unfolding of the Middle East war and the crisis in energy markets that we're seeing with escalating oil prices. That said, I think it's also something that we probably needed to have even before there was a crisis. We've been doing things a little bit bits and pieces in terms of oil reserves, the gas reservation policy, and of course, with the transition, we want to make sure that energy security is there for this country. But those basic needs have just been inflated, 1,000-fold by what's going on with Iran and the war there.
So here we are, and a lot of investors are probably thinking energy can sound really abstract, but the economic impacts are very real. Can we talk briefly about just explaining how does fuel supply risk feed into the broader economy?
So I think probably most people think about what's happening with oil prices when they go to fill their own car up at the petrol pump. But of course, oil and energy more broadly, and of course, gas is being affected as well. Those are vital components of our energy system. So it's not just about your car, it's about delivery trucks, it's about the energy that goes to homes and to businesses. Oil is a vital part of various products that we manufacture. Think about plastics. Gas is necessary for various industrial processes. So the fact that we're focusing a lot on oil prices, but global LNG prices are also rising quite dramatically. We've just seen a gas terminal hit in Qatar. That's a very significant portion of their demand, their supply rather. So we've got to be concerned about every single facet of the economy. It's not just, and when I say just, it's obviously a big hit to drivers. And if you have to drive to work because you don't have public transport, there isn't it's not much you can do about it. As the Reserve Bank governor said the other day, petrol prices are fairly inelastic. People just still need to keep buying because they need to travel where they can. There is some switching to public transport, but of course, public transport runs on various different types of energy. So, there's no getting away from it, whether it's diesel buses, unless, of course, they're fully electric. But at the moment, our electricity system is still dependent on fossil fuels as well.
And certainly, if you live in the city, it's probably easy to walk or catch a bus, but it's a very different story in regional areas and for farmers as well, where it is one of the key inputs when they're running their farm or their business.
Yeah, absolutely. It's absolutely essential in the agricultural sector, but in all sorts of our manufacturing, because we do still have a manufacturing sector in Australia. Some people might have forgotten that. Obviously, services are much bigger, and that's probably a good thing because not only are we using more renewables, but we are more services based. We're more energy efficient where we do use it than we were, say, during the oil shocks of the 70s and 80s. So there's still going to be a big impact, but not as catastrophic, one hopes, as we experienced back then.
Now, you talked about renewables, and that's one of the things I wanted to ask you. So where does green energy fit into current energy security discussions? And what I mean by that, is there a danger that short-term fuel security decisions or delays in decisions can distort longer term clean energy investments?
Yeah, look, I think that's right, because the focus very much at the moment is around, do we have enough storage to meet the oil requirements, that we need today, but we're kind of treating today as though that will go on for a long time. We don't want to invest too much in our capabilities there because we are committed to net zero by 2050. We've got significant reduction targets for 2035. So, we need to make sure that any plans we have for fuel security today don't interfere with that investment process. I don't think at the moment that that's likely. I think, we've still got things in place to encourage household level investment. We've got the Future Made in Australia program. We've got, the capacity investment scheme. So we've got a lot of things that are encouraging transition to renewables. I bet if you're driving an EV at the moment, I have a hybrid, so it's not quite as good, but I bet if you're driving an EV at the moment, you're feeling pretty smug. Obviously, demand for EVs has gone up astronomically. They're now a significant portion of new cars. I think that will continue to happen. And I think actually what we're experiencing today is a clear signal of why it's so foolish to keep being embedded in the fossil fuel market. Global geopolitics is so unstable. It might not be in 10 years, but that on top of the environmental concerns just means we need to be smarter about rolling out the amount of renewable energy that we need. The projects are in the pipeline. We just need to get the planning system to make sure those projects get delivered.
But are you saying this could change the timetable, or are you saying let's not move the timetable? We can walk and chew gum at the same time.
I would absolutely hope that we and our government can walk and chew gum at the same time. It's really important that we don't lose sight of the net zero requirement. The environment won't wait for us. Collective emissions won't wait. They will continue to deliver these terrible, unnatural disasters that are unfolding. We are seeing this. Australians everywhere have seen the increased flooding and fire damage due to global warming. So we can't stop. We absolutely can't stop. That said, we do need to deal with the problems of today. And the government is right to, have, this new czar, as we're all calling her, to help calm people, I think. I think there's a lot of politics in this, is just to say we are making sure that even if it comes down to rationing, we are going to do as much as we can to ensure that the Australian economy can keep going for the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, because obviously it takes time to roll out those new energy projects, but we absolutely should not be taking our foot off the accelerator on those.
Yeah, I'm already having a headache at the thought of the next interest rate hike in May. But going back to investors, so we know what we want the government to do. But for investors, are they being asked to weigh sustainability goals against energy security? Or is that a false choice? It just feels like the appetite might be less for ethical investing because of so much uncertainty out there.
But I would actually argue that uncertainty should give greater impetus to investment in renewable energy, reliable energy that is domestically produced, and that, once it's up and running, obviously we import a lot of the equipment, but once we've got it up and running, we are not then subject to these global shocks. And that is, so you've got a double benefit. You've got in fact, a triple benefit, because you've got the greater security. B, you've got cheaper energy as well. And we can see that already starting to happen. Energy was so much more expensive if we were reliant as much on new coal and gas. And then thirdly, we've got the environmental benefits, of course, of doing this. So it's, to me, an absolute no-brainer that you've got not just win-win, but win-win-win to keep going with this type of investment. This is a strong alarm bell that's being rung to say, do everything you can for domestic energy security and to lower prices as well, and as an added bonus, you're dealing with the environment and sustainability.
Well said. This is why you are the specialist in economics for the sustainable world. Any other insights or any other thoughts about what's happening right now in the world and what it means for us here?
Look, I think it's very scary for everybody. I think, this is incredibly uncertain. We're hearing forecasts from Treasury and the RBA that are running scenarios that look like inflation will be higher, growth will be lower. But to be honest, no one knows. We don't know how this is going to unfold. And that's what makes it quite scary. And I think, we're all probably still a little bit post-traumatic from the COVID disruptions, not purely from lockdowns, but from the supply chain disruptions that we witnessed then, the higher inflation that we witnessed. So I think we're all pretty much, we're on the edge of our seats, wondering how long this is going to go on and how deep the impacts are. It's, I feel particularly for younger people who might have the bigger mortgage and, they're not quite at their earning potential. But I do have confidence that we have, a treasurer who has a very sound grasp of economics. The Reserve Bank is, managing as best it can with the tools it can. And I think the next step is, we'll be looking to the May budget to see how the treasurer delivers, because he will absolutely be in the spotlight, as will the Finance Minister, Katie Gallagher, to make sure they get the balance right between what the economy needs for those longer term increase in productive capacity, helping reduce inflationary pressures, and managing household expectations. It's no easy task.
I'm definitely going to be in Canberra for that federal budget because I need to know. Now, Nicki, thank you so much again for helping us step back from the headlines and look at energy security from a long-term perspective for investors, but also just the man on the street. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Michelle.
This is The Greener Way. I'm Michelle Baltazar. Thank you for listening.
The Greener Way podcast is a product of FS Sustainability. All information in this podcast is for education and entertainment purposes only. It is not intended as a substitute for professional, legal, or tax advice. Before making any financial decisions, you should read the product disclosure statement, and if necessary, consult a licensed financial professional. For more information, head to the disclaimer page on the FS Sustainability website, fssustainability.com.au.